to our second session of today. It's the third day of Baltimore Data Week. Hopefully everybody's having a great data week. I know our team is. My name is Seema Iyer and I oversee the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance. We are your host for Baltimore Data Week here at the University of Baltimore. We have a little poll that asks people where they're from and what kind of sector of the economy they're in so that our speakers know who's in the virtual room here. But in the meantime, as you guys are filling out the poll, I'll just give you a little bit of overview about who we are and what we do and what Data Week is all about. We're the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance. We've been around for more than 20 years, and we are what's called a one-stop shop for getting information into the hands of communities. We pull out data from a wide variety of city, state, and federal agencies, and as well as proprietary data sets, and integrate them so that communities can see all kinds of information about where they live. We're part of the National Neighborhood Indicators Partnership, which is a learning network of over 30 cities around the country. You can see the little map of dots. The Urban Institute organizes us. And if you want to learn more about our partners around the country, it's at neighborhoodindicators.org. Our signature project is, of course, the Vital Signs Report. The Vital Signs Report is a compendium of data every year for every community in the city of Baltimore, which we break out into those 55 areas that you see on the map. We produce over 100 different indicators for each one of our communities. So we put out 5,500 data points plus every year. And that's been going on for 20 years. The 20th edition of Vital Signs came out this spring. And so you can imagine the volume of data. And the point is that we want to help people understand how neighborhoods have changed over time across a wide variety of topics, because communities need to know about everything, because everything is happening in our neighborhoods. This is the BNIA team. You're going to see us throughout the week. Like I said, I'm Seema Iyer. I have the great privilege of overseeing this team. Cheryl Knott is our research manager. Logan Schertz is our research analyst. Brittany McMullen is a research data specialist. And we have two new staff. Herman Paredes is our developer. He came on board in April. And Ashley Edwards is BNIA's first ever civic engagement and communication specialist. And she just came on board last week. So welcome to Ashley. And she's learning very quickly about a lot of things that we do here in the BNIA project. All right. So here is who's in the room so that our speakers can see who's here. We have a lot of people that live and work in the city of Baltimore, 36%. And then we have 29% that neither live in the city of Baltimore, but we welcome you. And we have folks from the community, folks from nonprofit organizations. I guess nonprofit is the biggest chunk, 36%, as well as fellow government and public service agency staff, including students and education and faculty. So you can see who's here. This is the third day. We're here on Thursday. We skipped Tuesday because that was a busy day for a lot of folks that were running as well as currently in office. We're in this morning session, which is about statewide related issues and resources. And in the afternoon, we're going to be coming back into Baltimore, talking about vacant and abandoned property, how to write a grant, and then learning from our data science students. And then tomorrow, we're going to be in person at the University of Baltimore. The morning sessions will be concurrent, so you can do a hybrid version for the morning, but the afternoon is all in person. It is what's called an unconference. People will pitch their idea. We have a bunch of people that have already pitched ideas that they want to hear. And if you're in the room, you get to vote on what you want to learn about and which session will go forward. So come join us for the unconference in the afternoon and come in person all day if you want. There'll be lunch. Who doesn't like lunch? So I'm going to turn it over to our speakers today. We're very, very excited to have members of the Access to Justice Commission, as well as from the State's Attorney's Office, to talk about all kinds of work that's been going on for the last 2 years on understanding the impact of evictions and housing insecurity in general in our state, and how we can create data sets that help us track impact towards those issues. So I'm going to turn it first over to Don Luedtke. Hopefully that's the right way to say it. And everyone's bio is going to be in the chat, but it's great to have both Don and Reena, but I'm going to turn it over to Don first. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you and good morning. So I am going to share my screen, hopefully in just a sec. Whenever you go to do that, it's like the bar moves to the funniest place on your screen. So let's see.
Yep.
It's Murphy's Law. All right,
we got it.
Yes. So we're going to be using a tool during this called Slido, where if you have your phone handy, you'll be able to like participate interactively, kind of like you did with the poll that Seema just had for you. So keep that handy so that you can use it throughout. So we're going to talk to you today about the housing data dashboard in particular that the Access to Justice Commission has put together and how that informs policymaking, but of course, all data informs policymaking. So a little bit of background. I'm Don Luedtke. I serve as the chair of the Data and Legal Technology Committee for the Access to Justice Commission. But inside the AG's office, some of the clients that I work with at state government focus specifically on data analysis and policymaking. So one of my 3 agency clients is the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, which works on informing education and workforce policymaking. And Reena, would you like to introduce yourself now since you're on the slide?
Thank you so much, Don, and thank you all. Good morning. Great to be here. I'm Reena Shah. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Access to Justice Commission.
All right, so what is the Access to Justice Commission and why does this, in particular, this subcommittee or committee on the commission exist? So we need to be able to enhance understanding of where the gaps are within our civil justice system and understand better how those problems are connected to one another, right? So I may be a lawyer, which I am, but it's very complicated for ordinary folks to be able to access legal services, to be able to interact with the court system. Frankly, even as a lawyer, sometimes it's difficult to interact with the court system, right? So for any of you on this who are practicing attorneys, inevitably throughout the 22 years that I've been in practice in Maryland, I've seen an evolution and things have improved, but still it's far more complicated than it need to be, particularly with respect to all the different nuance in the civil legal system. The other barrier is equity, right? So the more resources you have, the easier it is for you to secure that outside help or assistance from a licensed attorney to help you navigate through that, right? You hear in the news about wealthy folks, business folks who have platoons of lawyers working on discrete pieces of law for them. But what about the individual citizen who may be experiencing housing insecurity, who may be in need of protective orders and have a domestic violence situation at home and may have an issue at the same time compounding all the many problems with respect to child support, right? Those are 3 different and distinct areas of law, 3 incredibly important areas of law that all intersect together, where one person may be without ability to navigate, right? And to make things fair, because if you don't have access and you're not able to access the resources within the system and you're not given the same representation or even attempt to provide counsel, the outcomes are going to be different and disparate, and that's to be avoided. And so this is to sort of help level the playing field and to provide a one-stop shop for the different programs and services that may exist throughout the state to help individuals who need those resources get matched with them. So let's talk about what the data means and how that lack thereof continues to exacerbate these problems. I think probably many of you on this presentation have at one point or another heard the pitch for a piece of policy. or against a piece of policy. And a lot of it is done by giving anecdotal information, right? And there's not so much concrete data in the civil justice area to show what those problems are, and definitely not as many multi-factor statistical analyses done to show complex statistical analyses of how things are impacting one another. It's important to be able to know what the needs actually are, not just anecdotally. And one of my pet peeves is when people are presenting at a hearing and they're talking about what happened in another state. Because what really matters in terms of the way we need to make policy here in Maryland and to understand the needs of Marylanders is to know exactly where those gaps are. And it requires being able to take the data and then understand it in context to understand what the gap might be. So for example, one piece of policy that came, and it was in the budget amendment language in the Safe to Learn Act of 2018, required that the state do a gap analysis on access to behavioral health services for both adult population and the pediatric population. And the Behavioral Health Administration at the Department of Health assisted with that. And one of my clients worked on it because it was assigned to them to do in conjunction with the Department of Health. And so the way the data was presented showed a number of resources, but it wasn't expressed as percentage of population. And really, you can't tell how vast the gap is unless you don't take just raw numbers, but you look at it as an expression of the population to determine the need, right? Another piece is the ability to take the different data pieces and weave it together to tell a story, right? To use it as persuasive argument for or against a policy, or persuasive to demonstrate the need. And put it in context. Data itself is without emotion, without feeling, right? Numbers become dry for some people, but really numbers can drive storytelling. Numbers can drive the ability to persuade and contextualize it for the people who need that policy change in order to affect better, equitable service for them. So I like the quote at the bottom: data helps you to get to the why as much as it helps you to get to what to do, right? If you can't understand the why of why the data is showing the different things and what is going on and use it comparatively, it's going to be very difficult for policymakers to figure out what needs to be done in order to course correct what trends you're seeing in that data. So there's a lot of talk, of course, when you're making policy about cost, right? And everything comes with a price tag. And you're probably asking, oh, I understand those scales there, but I'm not understanding the pie. Why did this woman put a piece of a pie, missing a slice of pie on there? Because in policymaking, there is a lot of debate over and tension between saying, well, we know this is going to cost X, and there are people who believe there is finite pie, right? There may be finite dollars and they may need to be carved up in different ways in order to best assess everyone. But sometimes folks like to say, well, I don't want that to happen right now, because then if you do that, I will not be able to obtain that piece of pie. But as our good friend Ben Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Wise words from 1736 in the context of fires in Philadelphia, but even wiser now, because the problem is when you aren't attending to or dealing with those problems on the front end and being preventive, you end up costing tons more down the pike because it is a snowballing effect. So at the end of the day, the failure to address these different discrete social issues that impact folks within the civil justice world end up costing a lot more money to cure at the end of the day. So one of the quotes that's from the Access to Justice Commission's website that's really impactful is that every dollar of public money invested in civil legal aid on the front end saves $6 of public expenditures on the back end, right? That's powerful. And that is what you see time and time again with even just the story pieces of what is going on when there is a failure to be able to take that action on the front end. So now I'd like to know, and you can just scan the QR code up in the corner of the screen. Want to hear from all of you about how you use data in your own work.
Or you can go to slido.com and put in the number, right?
Yes, you can also go to slido.com and type in that little number and it'll all come up the same way.
And while you're doing that, make sure that you introduce yourself in the chat. Thanks to everybody who's done that so far.
Yes. And fun fact, 2 fun facts while you're responding. Seema and I went to college together. And we actually were in a show together, which was super fun. It was the first show I ever did at college, by the way. That was the first production I was ever in at Penn.
You were a freshman when I was a senior, right?
Yes, I was a freshman, a little youngin'. And the other fun fact, you asked the question in the poll, which was, you know, do you live in Baltimore City? Are you from Baltimore City? Do you work here, et cetera? So I moved to Maryland in 1997. And I don't live or work in Baltimore City anymore, but I'm on the board of Opera Baltimore, which is housed at the Engineers Club. So I've always had some attached over those 25 years that I have been in Maryland. I have always either lived, worked, gone to school in, or had some affiliation with Baltimore City. And I don't want to give that up, even though I live in Montgomery County. So.
Well, we brought you back here for Baltimore Data Week. So
yes, makes me very excited. Very excited. So let's see some of the results to identify trends and make business decisions. To do homework. Yep. Yeah. So for journalism, and I know one of our other Penn colleagues who works for ProPublica, right? The ability to use data helps inform a lot of that deeper dive investigative journalism that they do, as well as even day in, day out stories. So data is critical in being able to, again, put together those deeper journalistic stories. Identifying need, right? For budgeting. So someone here mainly uses case search, right? So, and one of the things you put on here where you're talking about is like figuring out where the gaps are. Data is also used to determine compliance, right? So if you're having data and you're using data to say, we're going to need X, Y, and Z done from a policy perspective, then sometime down the pike, you're going to want to take that data and figure out, did it work? Did it not work? Where might we need to tweak things? Or have the individual jurisdictions implemented those things with fidelity? Because a program is only as good as it is getting implemented and getting to the people who need it, right? So we talked about this a little earlier about civil justice not being a terribly data informed area. And it isn't. And it requires being able to take those different and discrete elements. And that's something where, you know, people might take a single sector look at one thing, but don't often do comparative analysis to show, is it the same person? Is it the same cohort of people who are experiencing housing insecurity, who are also having contact with social services entities who need other assistance? It's hard to discern that, and we haven't done a very good job as a state as a whole up till now with having the tools that the Access to Justice Commission has given given us as a resource to be able to look at those things side by side and take a look at comparative things occurring at different slices of time. Folks who end up experiencing chronic social issues end up incurring consumer debt, right? Because a lot of time they end up maxing out credit cards and in the effort to keep afloat. If you're constantly treading water and you're constantly trying to put out one fire, it's very hard to manage all the other little simmering embers in the rest of your world. And we need to be able to take a look at that and then figure out, how do we do a broader, better job of connecting those folks to the wraparound services, including legal services, that they're going to need in order to have the best possible outcomes, right? Because at the end of the day, if one domino falls, they're likely all going to fall. Sometimes one falls off in the middle, right? But for the most part, if once that cycle has started, if you aren't able to do something to intervene, to come in and help course correct that, it becomes an incredibly, incredibly slippery slope. And that is destabilizing to all of our communities. So what does civil justice mean to you? What does civil justice data mean to you specifically? Because I feel like we each have our own lens that we bring to this based on our own, whether it's our work or our personal interest or things happening around us in our community. But that may mean different things for each of you. Thank you. This is really, really great stuff. You know, from a policymaking standpoint, of course, it like for me, through my lens, it helps me to see where the needs are and what may be connected, right? One of the things that I think is incredibly important in policymaking is not having unintended consequences. So you want to make sure that if you're fixing the thing here, you're not causing a bigger problem over here. And figuring out and how best to take the concept of equity in each of these different measures or areas so that we can reduce disparate impact, as you said, down at the bottom, make sure things are fairer, and again, make sure that folks are getting the resources that they need and that programs or programs or policies that are being funded, whether at the state or local level, or even within a grassroots organization that's working on a discrete project in an area, are actually having the positive impact that you want it to have, right? So equity stands at the center. Social justice, of course, is not totally separate or distinct from civil justice. It's part and parcel of the same thing. We hear a lot about social justice in the news and not often as much as we should about civil justice, because really, in fact, that's all intertwined. And at the end of the day, you have to look in the middle and determine whether one group is out of sync with another and whether what you're doing is causing a negative policy impact that's going to create harm rather than cure harm. So that's important to keep in mind. So we're going to have Reena talk about the different tools that are available using the data and put it in context for you with what the Access to Justice Commission has done. And just a bit of background. So the Access to Justice Commission has existed prior to the pandemic and had been doing great work. At the time, after the pandemic started, the Attorney General's office partnered with Access to Justice Commission to do the COVID-19 Access to Justice Task Force, which is actually how I got to be involved with this work. And I think that it was incredibly eye-opening and insightful for people to see who may not have dabbled in this before or taken a look at it before, what was already happening prior to the pandemic, and then what was then subsequently worse because of it, right? So that then you can be mindful and thoughtful about how you're going to cure that moving forward, but not taking the approach that everything is caused by the pandemic, rather just saying this is something that has already sort of dropped a ton of bricks on the heads of things that were already incredibly problematic. So with that, Reena, I'll turn it over to you and you can let me know when to move the slides.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Thank you to Dawn for taking over as chair of our data committee. It's very helpful to have her insight into data, helping us guide our work. I'm going to talk briefly about some of the other data tools that the Access to Justice Commission has developed, and then walk you through the housing data dashboard. Just want to let you all know that we do have a civil justice data dashboard. It was the first of its kind that we created during the task force that Dawn was referring to. If you can believe it, there was no such thing before. So there was nothing that brought together information about all of the things that happen in the civil justice system. And many of you either may be familiar or may not be familiar, but the civil justice system makes up a large percentage, almost 83% of all the cases in Maryland. So oftentimes, because you guys, I'm sure, watch a lot of TV and watch a lot of cop shows, or at least legal shows or something else, you kind of know a lot about the criminal justice system. But really, a lot of the cases happen in the civil justice system. And that includes everything from housing to public benefits cases, which don't even happen in court. They happen in administrative agencies, to things that happen in federal court, like immigration or bankruptcy. So the system is vast and huge, and it really impacts everything that you think about in the social sphere. For example, housing, consumer, debt, safety, security, public safety, health, and other things. So just briefly, Civil Justice Data Dashboard, you can find it on the Attorney General's website. And, one of the things that we realized when we started bringing this data together, so in the beginning of the pandemic, you all remember everything sort of went remote and courts went remote. And we pretty soon realized that, the digital divide is often talked in terms of education, right? Like students were not receiving or didn't have equity in terms of could they access their computers and the internet for learning, but it had a huge impact on the justice system as well, because as you may recall, courts went remote. And what we discovered by doing this data work and pulling this together is that actually 50% of the zip codes in Maryland did not have enough, upload speeds to do Zoom calls. And, if all court hearings were then going to remote mostly, we saw that as a big impact on the civil justice system and, other issues as well. But, that was sort of these things started coming out as we were starting to visualize the data and the impacts that it had. We've also created this thing called a story map, which is very, what we're trying to do is bring together many different data points. So it's not just related to housing, but you can find data related to consumer debt cases, to protective orders, to other things in the civil justice system. We've tried to bring it together for the first time and in a way that you can sort of compare it across counties. You can understand the types of people that usually get ensnared in the civil justice system and how many do you have in different jurisdictions. So you can really start doing some comparison and understanding who are the folks and what are the issues that are most sort of entangling people in the civil justice system. Next slide, please, Dawn. So of course, you all are here today to get a demonstration of the civil justice, the housing data dashboard. And so this is the newest iteration we just released it last week, of our data tools. And the reason should be obvious to most of you, data related to the most voluminous type of case, eviction related cases in the civil justice system. Just to put out a statistic, before COVID started, I should have made a Slido about this. How many people can guess, how many cases there were, eviction related cases, housing related cases in the civil justice system? Well, it's kind of mind boggling that the case number was over 650, sometimes 675, 100,000 cases in the civil justice system prior to the pandemic. So it is a very voluminous type of issue. And of course, it has huge consequences because those cases are the only way to legally evict someone in Maryland. So you have to go through the court system if you are going to have a legal eviction in Maryland. And of course, eviction is such a destabilizer, right? That if you lose your home, you're going to lose all kinds of other supports and services. You're going to have impacts on your educational outcomes. You're going to have shelter costs. You're going to have, or not costs, but you might have health related issues, et cetera. So there's a lot of costs associated with eviction, but there wasn't any data available in terms of how many were happening. And you had to go scour through sort of like, these reports on the judiciary website to kind of even figure out what was happening in Maryland. Just to let you all know, the Access to Justice Commission, joined by other nonprofits, really pushed for more eviction data, and we succeeded. So starting in January 2023, we are going to have more granular data, especially related to zip codes. And so we can understand hotspots of where things are really happening, and also related to the type of case that these evictions are caused by. But this is the data we have now. And so we thought, let us start with the data that we have now, and let us at least visualize it so we can see what's going on. So at this point, I am going to stop the screen share of Dawn, share my screen, and hopefully you all see the data dashboard in front of you. So, the data dashboard, the housing data dashboard, we start off by explaining the thing that that Dawn talked about before, is that the lack of civil justice data is actually a barrier in itself. So just by bringing it out, making it accessible to the community, to advocates, to leaders to make policy decisions in itself is, breaking down a barrier to access to justice. Now, when we look at the dashboard, please understand that we have been able to put on this dashboard the data that is available. There is a lot of data that is not available. We're hoping to get more, as I mentioned, through this new law. However, the eviction cases, especially these failure to pay rent cases, are still paper-based a lot in Maryland. And so combined with the volume of cases and the fact that it's paper, data is hard to come by in these types of cases. So just let you know where our system is in Maryland. But some of the functionality in this dashboard, one, we wanted to show sort of like month over month trends. So the number of filings, the number of evictions is just very, obviously the pandemic had a huge impact. So you will see here the blue line, you can see the precipitous fall from March to April in the number of cases. You were up here in the 50, 60,000 per month range, and then you fall almost to zero over here. And that's obviously when courts shut down. But then you can see that there's a steady rise in 2022, and you get to about, half the level of 2019. You can see pre-pandemic how high the cases were. And clearly, we still haven't caught up to those levels of cases. So here, the data points that we have included: total failure to pay rent filings, that's what FTPR stands for. And then some of the other data that the judiciary releases right now, where people actually appear in cases. So you can see the number. There are about 60,000 per month filings. Who is appearing in court? 2,000. So you can see a dramatic drop. Most people don't even end up in court. So either these cases are being resolved out of court, or something is happening. So that is important for us to see and know that this many people don't show up. And even with the people that show up, it's such a small percentage. But the courts are still bombarded. They feel like this is still an overwhelming amount of people to process in the court. So that's important for us to know that, we are not even processing the volume of cases that's actually being filed and what's happening with those cases that are being filed. Then you look at the cases that were dismissed. So about a third. So around here, 60,000. Here we are around 15,000, so less than a third. Are dismissed. Those were pre-pandemic, and that's important for us to know. Warrants of restitution are actually what happens when a failure to pay rent case is filed, and then a judgment is actually issued in the case, and then the landlord has the ability to get a warrant to have that person evicted. So you can see in terms of how many warrants were filed, and I keep focusing on 2019 numbers only because it's easier to see, it's red, but also because those were kind of like more accurate counts, and we are still in flux with COVID, trying to figure out, where cases are and how cases are catching up. So I'm just focusing on that, but obviously you have that data available to you month by month. If you hover over the dashboard, you can get the raw numbers for each month. But warrants of restitution, again, the number is around 20,000. So you can just see 2/3 are gone by the time it gets to the warrant phase. And then when it actually gets to the eviction phase, we're at 2,000, hovering around 2,000 at that point. So you go from about 60,000 a month filed to 2,000 evicted. And there's a lot in between we can do policy-wise and in terms of, getting in there and helping people and kind of understanding what is going on. So some of the functionality here, you can filter by county. So all is the state. So it gives you statewide numbers, but you're saying, okay, but I really want to know what is happening in Baltimore County. And so it will change the graphs. It'll show you what's happening in Baltimore County. And then we have a comparison line graph on this side. So here you can also say, okay, I want to compare Baltimore County to, let's say, Queen Anne's County. And I want to just look at the eviction rate. And so then you can sort of say, okay, you can compare across counties. It'll allow that functionality. And you can also compare it to the whole state to say, how does my county compare to what's going on in the state? And so that is the first tile on the dashboard. The second tile is an interactive map that allows you to, one, get all of the Maryland statewide statistics here. But this is cool because let's say you're interested in evictions that happened in 2019. You can immediately visually see, okay, these were the problem areas for evictions in 2019. Baltimore County was a big player, Baltimore City, and then down here, Somerset, which maybe some of you thought of when you thought of high evictions in Maryland, but maybe you didn't. And so what this allows you to do, and when you kind of hover over the county, what you'll see is that you'll get the total raw numbers of, okay, how many cases were filed and dismissed and how many evictions happened. But then you will also see the comparable numbers across counties. So we know rural counties are less populated and, by extension, probably have fewer households, rental households in them. And so we've been able to sort of standardize the denominator so that you can actually compare it across counties. So while it may seem like, failure to pay rent filings, well, seems like Baltimore County has a lot of failure to pay rent filings, the most. But in evictions, this county is also lighting up. And the reason for that is because, it could just be that based on the population they have and based on the rental households they have, they still have a higher number of evictions than the rest of the state. So it allows for that cross county comparison. And you are able to then switch, you want to look at 2021, then you can see, oh, it's different. The visual is different for 2021. Things have changed. Now it looks like Dorchester County and Cecil County are really the hotspots. So it allows you to see that visually and get that information very quickly. The next tile has to do, we just wanted to give you raw year-over-year numbers. So it's like very visually easy for you to see okay, what is going on in terms of these filings, these cases? So you see, okay, here's what's happening in the state, as I was mentioning, around 675,000 filings pre-pandemic. And then we have dropped, but it just gives you the raw numbers. Okay, quickly, you want to know what happened in 2021. There are the raw numbers. And then eviction sort of raw numbers. You know, we had about 20,000 compared to 6,000, et cetera. So this is just an easy way for you to sort of compare. And again, there's the functionality where you can look at different counties and also compare the numbers in this comparison bar chart. And the last sort of tile here, just we wanted to give everyone just the numbers. So this is essentially, you know, the raw data. And there's two different ways you can look at it. You can look at the raw counts, or you can look at the per 100,000 rental household counts, which allows for comparison across counties. And so you can, you know, any of these things, you can just say, okay, what's actually happening? And you have all of the information available to you in sort of chart form. So let me stop there. We're at 12 o'clock, and I might be able to take one question, but I do have to kind of have a hard stop at 12. So let me stop there and see if there are any questions.
There weren't any in the chat, but if you all want to put them in the chat, you can, or if you prefer to express them anonymously, I can put up a Slido where you can put it in anonymously, but since we have a manageable amount on the Zoom, we can do it where you just put it in the chat and I'm monitoring it. From a consumer protection standpoint, would this data be available by property management company at some point? That would be probably, I'm going to say, based on what I know about what we get from the data. I mean, for the filings, we would know who filed it, which entity filed it. But I don't know that we have that collected or categorized in that way in what we've done. But I get what you're saying. You want to know who are the major offenders of this, you know, who gives no one a room to wiggle or to work things out, and who, you know, on day one after they've done something that would trigger the ability on a failure to pay rent files. So that's a great question, and that's something we can take back to the committee. Is there a way to calculate rates for the county's account for population or number of households? Or is it not possible based on the inability to have a clear denominator? So do you want to answer that one, Reena?
Well, you would be able to take the raw data and then take household size by county and calculate it yourself. It's not necessarily on the dashboard, but that's
right.
Can you download the data table? Did you show that? Or maybe Carolyn knows. Can you, so you can see the data, but can you actually download it?
We're just asking, we tried to put instructions on how to download it. It seems very complicated. So if you're interested in getting the raw data or just getting the data, you can email Carolyn Lichtenstein and put her email in the last slide here. So if you're interested in getting the data, you can email Carolyn right here, and the email is right there on the.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, Carolyn did an amazing job with this dashboard. Congratulations. So we are out of time, so I do want to let you all go, but thank you, Reena and John. This was amazing. Such a huge resource, because isn't Maryland famously not on any other kind of eviction databases because they're not public as some other states are. So I think we're on our way to having us become a part of the other states around the country, and this is a huge leap forward for our state. We do have a evaluation for this session. If one of my staff people can pop that into the chat, please keep telling us how you're experiencing Data Week, and we will send all these questions to Reena and Dawn, and obviously to the entire commission, because in the end, this is what it's about. We want to make sure that people are engaged and continue to be engaged as the process goes forward. And then our next session today is we're talking about vacant and abandoned housing, so maybe there's a housing theme. vacant and abandoned housing here in Baltimore and how you can get involved in collecting data about our vacants with Fight, Blight, Be More, and Nika Namdi. That starts at 2 o'clock. There is a separate Zoom link for that. And please come at 2. And hopefully if we, again, if you are interested in coming in person tomorrow, Friday, we're at the University of Baltimore and registration is available on the Day-to-Day website. Thanks, Dawn and Reena. It's great to see you. And happy Data Week, everybody.
Thank you.
See many of you at 2 o'clock.